Expanding the digital print to uncommon surfaces, pre-coating fabrics and papers. We're going to look at what I use. I'm using the Ink-Aid. I've got a white matte pre-coat out today. I have the clear gloss pre-coat type 2, and then I have the semi-gloss pre-coat. So for my purposes today, I'm going to coat a couple pieces of Luchador. You can see that this one Luchador is a lot thinner than the other. I usually get it in two thicknesses, thick and thin. This is a 1.5 ounce and this is a 3 ounce. I get these from Texas Art Supply. When I coat my Luchador, because it is a spun bond polyester and it is porous, porous as far as the Ink-Aid will soak through it, I'm going to stack them so that the Ink-Aid is going to soak through to the bottom once this one is wet, and I won't waste as much product. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my little foam brush and I'm going to use my tape to get it totally clean. You just never know what kind of stuff is living in here. Then I'm going to do the same thing to my sheets of Luchador so that I do not have any kind of junk or whatever inside of them. Okay, so for the Luchador, I'm going to use the clear gloss pre-coat, the type 2, because it is a spun bond polyester, and I want to make sure that I use a good coating on it where it's going to give me a good print. Now for these, I am using a clear so that as this is printed, you will be able to almost see through it. And a lot of times I heat distress my Luchador so it's really, really interesting and barky looking when I put it in some of my work. So I'll take this top sheet off and put it aside and let it dry. And then the underneath one, you can see, has a little Ink-Aid on it, so that's kind of nice because now you don't use as much on the second sheet. I try to keep my fingers out of it as much as I can. You can wear rubber gloves, and you probably should. I just don't personally myself like doing that. So I just try to keep my fingers on the very edges. Don't want any fingerprints in your prints. Okay, so I'm done with the Luchador now. I'm going to put this one aside, and I'm going to go on to the Organdy. But first, because there is a little product on my table, I'm just going to take a little squirt of water and then one of my towels and just wipe it off so that it's clean underneath. Again, I'm going to take both of these and I'm going to stack them. But on these, I'm going to use a different coating. I'm going to use the semi-gloss pre-coat. This is a fabric and it'll soak in really nicely. And again, I'm going to do the clean up before I start my surface. Okay, now I've stirred these up really good before I started, so that is one thing you really want to make sure that you do. You want to make sure they're stirred up. And I didn't really press this organdy very well. I mean, actually, I didn't press it at all, not very well. So it's got a little bit of wrinkle stuff in it. So you want to make sure that you don't miss the underneath parts of a wrinkle with Ink-Aid. In the next video, I'm going to show you how we press this so that it'll be nice and flat when you want to run it through the printer. Sometimes you kind of have to look at the reflection of this to see if it's getting coated really well. If you want, you could tape the corners, but then I don't get any product on the corners, and then if I want to, see, now that looks pretty good. If I want to print it, overprint it, and I don't have any product on the corners, then I have a little bit of a problem. So next, we're going to do the other piece of organdy, but I'm going to use, you can see, I think, a little bit, there was something on the table down here. You can see a little bit of dry space in here. So on this piece, I'm going to do it with a little bit of the white mat, and then it'll have a different kind. The print will be lighter and darker in places. So again, I'm going to take a brush and go over it. Now I can't go over that because I've already got inkade on it. So I'm just going to put a little of the white mat here and blend it in. See if I can keep it off of some of that part that's already got the semi-gloss pre-coat on it. And then when we print it, we'll see what that looks like. When I first started printing, I just tried all sorts of silly things, and I still do. And it's really amazing what beautiful prints you can get and what types of things can happen with this. I usually cut mine up and use them in collage or mixed media type work, so I'm not as concerned as getting a perfect print. Well, I mean, I want a perfect print, but if some inconsistencies happen in it, I like that. So I might not be this casual if I was doing a specific photograph for a photograph print. So I'll put this aside now. And then I'm going to wash this again. Now I have a piece of handmade paper that I'm going to show you. I'm probably going to print on a lace paper for the printing demo, but since I have this paper here handy, I'm going to use this paper. This paper is a little bit raised on places, and I'll probably end up printing both sides of this because I'll be using it in a book that I'm working on right now. So I'm going to go back to the semi-gloss pre-coat, and that's what I'm going to put on the back here. I'll probably put it on the front too, but obviously it has to dry before you do that. Now this paper isn't too bad because it's thick, but on papers you want to do them quickly because the wetter they get, the more they can fall apart. And if you don't test the paper that you're going to try this on, such as if you were going to do a lace paper, you couldn't even use this much pressure on the brush because it'll totally fall apart on you. You have to be quick, and then you want to move it someplace safe so you don't have to move it again while it's still wet. You want it to be totally dry before you go to move it again because you can damage it. It can stick to something and be wet in places and rip apart. So this one is a little different because, like I said, it is a little thicker. But I'm just gonna coat it up and then move it aside. If I was using a really thin paper, I would have other paper underneath it again to take some of the product as it seeps through, because it's just nice to have a little less waste in the product. Okay, this looks pretty good. Get these edges where my fingers were. And then I'm going to set this aside to dry. Now this is a crinkle paper, and I have already coated the other side of this paper. So this has already has the semi-gloss on it, and since I'm printing both sides and I want a flat print on this side, I'm going to use the white matte. White matte inkade is going to give me a pretty nice matte finish print, and it is very much like a regular photograph. You don't see the background through it, so you won't see this metallic color through the print. But on the other side, where I have the semi-gloss, you will see the metallic color. So since I'm going to use this in a book, I like to have both sides printed. So I'm going to coat this with the white matte and then put it aside. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to go coat a few more papers, let them dry, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at how you get them ready to print.